Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Dhena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah. We welcome everybody who's joined us online. And tonight I'm going to, by request, read something from the book that just was published by the BBT in Sweden. Brahma Muhurta Prabhu, who's in charge of that. So I'm going to read a little bit from the beginning of the book just to give an idea of what it's about. I was asked by several devotees over the years to write down the things that I'd learned in distributing books over the years. And now with your permission, I'll read from the preface. Is that all right? Okay. White Castle is a popular American fast food chain known for its stark white castle-like buildings and cheap burgers. Nationally, franchises like these move millions of tons of product, the meat of cows systematically slaughtered to satisfy the whims of people's tongues. After reading Srimad Bhagavatam, who could not easily identify these eateries as fortresses from which Kali personified dispenses sin wholesale? It was by design then that my dear godbrother Divyanga Dasa and I regularly stormed the gates of the White Castle in St. Louis, Missouri, in order to distribute Srila Prabhupada's books to its customers inside. During the early 1980s, every Saturday afternoon, after a day of distributing books at Lambert Field, St. Louis's International Airport, on our way back to the temple, we'd make a detour through the poverty-stricken inner city of St. Louis. Divyanga would pull up his silver Chevy Caprice Classic outside the White Castle there and keep the engine running, while I ran in, cradling a stack of bright blue first canto Srimad Bhagavatams and handed one to every customer. After a week of selling books at the airport, we usually had an excess of donations. We wanted to share the wealth by distributing extra books as charity. Although some people in the White Castle donated for their book, those who didn't still got to keep it if they wanted to. After these excursions, Divyanga and I would marvel, and we still do today, at how the sublime Srimad Bhagavatam, which rejects all religious activities that are materially motivated, ended up in the trunk of his Chevy and traveled all the way to the inner city of St. Louis, Missouri, where illiteracy rates were said to run high, and even those who did read books would never have dreamed of buying a book like Srimad Bhagavatam. We wondered at it, but we knew how this miracle had happened. Srila Prabhupada had performed it. Following the words of Narada Muni, quote, this Srimad Bhagavatam is meant to create a revolution in the impious lives of the world's misdirected civilization. Srila Prabhupada had loaded 200 sets of these hard-bound Vaikuntha deities into trunks, brought them to the shores of America, and launched a full-scale spiritual revolution with them. Before that, he had been based at his Radha Damodar sanctuary in Vrindavan, painstakingly drafting and assembling in 3 volumes the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, a work containing the world's most detailed knowledge of God. These books first hit the humming streets of Manhattan before being launched onto the streets of cities around the world. By extreme good fortune, Divyanga and I were among the thousands whose lives were transformed by these books and who had joined Srila Prabhupada's spiritual revolution. Now, as card-carrying members of this insurgency, we ran everywhere to distribute these books to everyone we met. In the material world, every soul feels unbearable stress. The pure spiritual being encased in a gross body and subtle mind takes a beating life after life, suffering dearly. Srila Prabhupada writes about an ocean of tears in his purport to Srimad Bhagavatam 3:28-32, created by the accumulated tears shed by souls disappointed and confounded by life's reverses. To avoid the distress built into the hard struggle for existence, some people numb themselves with intoxication. Others take to philosophical speculation to justify and sidestep the gloom. But in Srimad Bhagavatam 1.5.32, Narada Muni explains to Srila Vyasadeva the real cure. O Brahmana Vyasadeva, it is decided by the learned that the best remedial measure for removing all troubles and miseries is to dedicate one's activities to the service of the Supreme Lord, Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna. Page by page, Srila Prabhupada's writing dispenses medicine to the materially distressed mind, hearing about Lord Krishna from the mouths of his pure, unmotivated devotees. Ultimately, the cause of all suffering is ignorance, and ignorance leads to sinful deeds and the karmic reactions for them. In Lord Krishna's own words, spoken in Bhagavad Gita 4.37, transcendental knowledge burns to ashes all the karmic reactions of a living being, just as a fire burns to ashes unlimited fuel supplied to it. Rupa Goswami therefore says that the greatest charity work one can do is to distribute transcendental knowledge. Transcendental knowledge relieves people's sufferings, and those who receive such knowledge learn not only why they are suffering, but how to stop it forever. During an epidemic, can those who hold the cure not feel responsible for dispensing it? Those who possess a vaccine must take all risks to distribute it. In Srimad Bhagavatam 8.7.39, Lord Shiva states, people in general, being bewildered by the illusory energy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, are always engaged in animosity toward one another. But devotees, even at the risk of their own temporary lives, try to save them. Therefore, Lord Chaitanya directs, distribute this Krishna consciousness movement all over the world. Let people eat these fruits of love of God and ultimately become free from old age and death. Following this order, the Vaishnavas sacrifice their own peace of mind and move into the cities to distribute this medicine to the needy. Srila Prabhupada, for example, despite every conceivable obstacle, old age, declining health, no money, and no connections, left the holy land of Vrindavan and daringly boarded a freighter bound for America, bringing with him only a few meager personal effects, yet trunks of first canto Srimad Bhagavatams. The Srimad Bhagavatam is pregnant with the words of Lord Krishna and pure devotee saints, such as Uddhava, Maitreya, Vidura, Brahma, Narada, Shukadev, Parikshit, and Prahlad. And the books Srila Prabhupada brought were further embellished with his own sublime purports, the fruits of his lifelong practice of hearing with rapt attention the words of his spiritual master, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. As it turned out, people everywhere were ready to hear this spiritual message. They still are. I have therefore written our family business to encourage devotees everywhere to distribute transcendental knowledge, most particularly in the form of Srila Prabhupada's books. This book is meant not only to help devotees in their quest to learn or perfect the art of distributing Srila Prabhupada's books, but also to inspire and assist those who are organizing this great transcendental sacrifice. The aim is to create a culture that will live and breathe book distribution, an atmosphere in which devotees can find true happiness in meeting people and introducing them to Krishna consciousness. Through hearing, chanting, and relishing what's in the books, and through organizing in a systematic way, the distributors and the devotees who back up the distributors, my hope is that Srila Prabhupada's movement will be reinvigorated with the spirit Srila Prabhupada himself breathed into it. Quote, distribute books, distribute books, distribute books. Nothing will please His Divine Grace more. Srila Prabhupada not only asked that his books be widely and profusely distributed, but he also encouraged his followers to become expert in presenting them. In a letter to Balimardan Das, dated December 31st, 1972, Srila Prabhupada calls book distribution a great art. Quote, I am convinced that if you simply glorify Krishna in our books in the best descriptive manner, that anyone and everyone, no matter even atheist or otherwise, they can be convinced to purchase. Of course, that is a great art, and not everyone can do it, but gradually, by practice of preaching in this way, striving to so much present a wonderful picture of our books to the people, gradually you will master the trick how to do it. Moreover, Srila Prabhupada recommended distributing his books as a practice for advancing in spiritual life, sadhana. In his purport to Srimad Bhagavatam 10.2.37, for example, he writes, by fully concentrating on distributing books for Krishna, one is fully absorbed in Krishna. This is samadhi. And in another letter, typical of his fire for spreading Krishna consciousness, he calls on his followers, quote, whenever possible, try to talk about Krishna consciousness to your friends or whomever you may meet. Simply by this attempt, you'll get superior strength and knowledge about Krishna consciousness. In our family business, we look into not only how distributing Srila Prabhupada's books is important to individual ISKCON devotees as sadhana, but also how and why it is vital to the natural organic growth and health of our ISKCON society as a whole. Many devotees already regularly distribute books, and a growing number of other devotees are eager to get involved. Experts, newcomers, well-wishers, retirees in need of a refresher course, all will find something in this book to inspire them. Finally, this book is meant to give a fresh and favorable second look at distributing books for those who, for whatever reason, now think of it disparagingly. Our family business also discusses the history of book distribution in ISKCON and includes foundational principles for building a successful book distribution program. The paramount importance of proper conduct in public, illustrative and inspirational first-person stories with dialogue, new methods of book distribution, secrets of highly effective book distributors, and more. How did Srila Prabhupada feel about the need for such an intense endeavor to organize the distribution of his books? He wrote this in a letter to Tejas Das on January 5th, 1973. Tax your brain for finding new ways and better ways for distributing our books widely. In writing this book, I have sincerely tried to do just that. If on account of taxing my brain, one more devotee is inspired to take up this art, or one extra book is distributed, I will consider the book a success. And if our family business helps spark a second wave of massive book distribution in my lifetime, I will die a happy soul. And the first section of the book after that introduction is called Chronicles. And there's a quote that I got from Rameshwar Prabhu, who had the fortune of riding with Srila Prabhupada in the same compartment when they were on their way to Kumbh Mela. And Prabhupada was asking Prabhupada a lot of questions about book distribution and the future of spreading the Krishna consciousness movement. Because Rameshwar was a BBT trustee, and he was responsible for the early organization of book distribution through which there were very large increases all over the world. He masterminded much of that. And Prabhupada knew that. And so he disclosed to him a lot of important information and sentiments about book distribution. So one of the quotes that I took from his diary that he wrote while he was riding with Srila Prabhupada in the same compartment is as follows. Yes, it is a revolution. That is what I think as I write on and on. A revolution to change the entire course of human history. That was spoken in 1977. Very much parallel to the verse I quoted earlier in this section. Tadvag visargo janataga viplavo yasmin pratishlokam abadyavatyapi namanyanantasya shankitani yat shinvanti gayanti grananti sadavaha. In which Narada Muni says to Vyasadeva that this Srimad Bhagavatam is a different creation. It's not from this material world. It comes from a higher place. It comes from the spiritual world itself. And he says it's meant to create a revolution in the impious lives of this world's misdirected civilization. And now let's create a revolution in here by moving up, because there's gaps. And we always like to close the gaps. Any gap you see, feel free to close it up. Instantly better. And one of the ways that we can have a productive human life, which is recommended in the scripture. By the way, how many hours do we get in a day? Approximately. How many hours do we get every day? How many? You're not sure? How many? Oh, okay, good. Everybody gets the same amount, right? Yes? Okay, good. It's nice to check in on that regularly, and also to see that we have a rare opportunity in human life. The Srimad Bhagavatam says, Nrideham adyam sulabham sadurlabham. Sadurlabham means it's extremely rare to get a human body. It's called Nrideham. Deham means body, and Nri means human. Human body is special. And then the verse goes on to compare it to a ship or a boat that can cross over the ocean of material existence. And to ply that boat across the ocean, one needs favorable breezes. And Krishna says that the favorable breezes come from the scripture and from the great saints who expound on the scripture. And then he says, when you cross, you must have a captain as well to help you go through, to navigate the waters. Otherwise, it's very risky to go across by yourself. And this way, it says, you can cross the ocean of material existence, and if you don't utilize this very expensive and very rare boat and opportunity to go across the ocean of material existence, you use it for some other reason, then the verse says that you're a killer of your own self. You've killed such a rare opportunity that comes after perhaps millions and millions of births in various species of life. So our most important asset in life is time. And we all get 24 hours in a day. How we utilize that time while we're in this human body is vital. Every second counts. And therefore, the great acharyas have set up parameters for how to practice most efficiently in one's spiritual endeavors, how to utilize one's time for the highest purpose, so you get the most out of this human life. And in this book, one of the chapters I wrote on is about how to have strong sadhana. And why do you think I wrote about that in a book about book distribution? What do you think? Anybody? Do we have microphones still, or did we run out of them? They wore out. We used them so much they've turned into powder. I guess they're gone, finished. Well, 2 hands up in the back, and then Malini had a suggestion. We need a bushel basket full of microphones, please. This is the only temple that I've ever seen that has more than 2 remote microphones. Oh, okay. Malini, go ahead, and then there's...
The first law of book distribution is your sadhana.
The first law of book distribution is your sadhana must be strong. So when I was writing the book, and my editor said, one of my editors said, now you have to sell what is strong sadhana. You can't just say you have to have strong sadhana. So I took the time, and I must say it was an edifying experience to write about what is strong sadhana. And when I was reading the chapter back to Keshavarti Maharaj, both of us had the same experience, that every time we heard the chapter on what is strong sadhana, we both felt compelled to strengthen our sadhana by practicing some of these principles. Make your point, and then let's pass the mic back to Jagarini and Kanka.
So my comment is, not only book distribution, everything we do is ultimately meant for stronger sadhana. If we do whatever we do, but the sadhana is not strong, or is not helping us to do strong sadhana, then what is the use of that activity? Everything should help in performing stronger sadhana.
Yes. Every aspect of our life.
It's our connection with our Guru and Krishna, and it's the foundation of all of our devotional service.
And you're answering the question.
Why do we need strong sadhana?
Now can you repeat what you said?
It's our connection with Guru and Krishna and the foundation of all of our devotional service.
Well, that's a nice, that's a very concise statement. It's the connection with our Guru and Krishna and the foundation of all our devotional service. Yes, in fact, oftentimes devotees wonder, what do I do when my Guru is not present? Well, generally speaking, Guru is not present, but Shastra says that if you follow the instructions of the Guru, then you'll never feel separated. And so it's a very helpful comment that you made. And also the foundational part. Without this foundation of strong sadhana, then just as if I built a house on a poor foundation, no matter how elaborate the house becomes, eventually it will crumble because the foundation is not good. On the other hand, if you keep a strong foundation in sadhana, then no matter where you go in your life, you'll be able to develop nicely. It won't be dependent on external circumstances so much. Narayana parak sarve nakutaschana bhibyati swarga pavarga narakeshu apitulyarta darshinaha. The Srimad Bhagavatam says, in fact, Lord Shiva said this, that devotees, because they're so absorbed in worshiping Krishna, don't care where they are. And he gave 2 extremes. They can be in heaven or they can be in hell. And to them, it's equal. Apitulyarta darshinaha. To them, they see it as equal because their foundation is not built on how they're accommodated externally, but how they're able to go on performing their devotional practice. And that can be done anywhere. Kanka.
Well, Jagarini said what I wanted to say, but anyway, the other
what she
part,
said.
Yeah. No, actually, I have a little to add to that, is that, you know, like in Alcoholics Anonymous, they say one day at a time. So one day at a time, if we do the best we can with our sadhana, it makes the day. It makes your day. It gives you that, like you said, foundation, and any time the wind can blow, but the foundation's strong, then you will remain strong and remember Krishna. So it's a cleaning of the heart and a reminder of Krishna. Always remember Krishna and never forget him.
Thank you very much. Which you apparently seem to have been doing all these years.
As a practical matter, it's well known that devotees who have strong sadhana are more successful in distributing books. And there are several reasons for that. But one reason lawyers know, those who practice in front of juries know that people pick up on people are very sensitive to what someone's mood is and what someone's actually feeling. If you're trying to trick people, they sense it, and there's a lot of nonverbal communication that goes on. And when a devotee is really trying to distribute mercy to everyone, the super soul in the heart of the people that they approach is actually, there's a communication that's going on there, and the devotee who's actually practicing what's in the book and a living example of what's in the book is attractive, and people who see them and they say, I want to get what he's got, and they feel that you're compassionate and that you're not just trying to exploit them. And you know, I've had people come up to me on book distribution and say, did you know that you're glowing? Actually, I've had that happen before.
And did you know that you were?
No, I didn't.
You didn't know.
In fact, I was telling these two ladies in Santa Cruz that, I'm not really very, I'm not really very good at, Krishna consciousness, but even though I've been trying for years, and they said, no, you're actually glowing. But I think that's the point. That is, we have strong sadhana and we're very connected, and then we can concentrate. Our senses are acute. We know what we're doing, and also the people can tell that our motivation is pure and that we're actually giving out something valuable that we've already gotten, and that's why we're happy and peaceful and not disturbed and so forth.
Thank you very much. Now I'm going to read the chapter. Page 279. Chapter 14, What is Strong Sadhana? My Mridanga teacher, Akinchana Krishna Das, recently blessed me with this gem of wisdom about the magic of practice. Start slow and be precise. By slow and accurate practice, you will eventually play fast and correctly. But if you play too fast in the beginning, with flawed technique, you will never come to play fast and well. Srila Prabhupada was an advocate of methodical practice. He liked to say, drops a day, wear the stone away. Once, pointing to a shelf of the books, to the prolific writings he had produced in such a short time, he said to his servant, Shrutikirti Das, I have done all this a little at a time. One of the best things about being human is that we can get better at something with practice. In fact, with knowledge and practice, we can set a new course in life. If I don't like something about myself now, I can learn new ways of being, practice them, and eventually transform myself. For example, if I want to become equipoised, I can practice not reacting to the things that people do that usually cause me distress. Or, if I don't like my occupation, I can enroll in school, study diligently, and learn a new profession. Srila Prabhupada notes this ability in people. Quote, so nobody is born Brahmana or intelligent class of men, but by cultivation of knowledge, by practice, by good association, one can come to the higher standard of life. Unquote. So what is this thing called practice? It is the acquiring of proficiency at an activity or state of being by repeatedly going over it. Practice means repetition. Most often, the dogged, persistent repetition that's required for mastery. When you see someone especially proficient at a task, you can be sure that he or she has practiced it well. Aristotle writes, for the things we have to learn before we can do them, we learn by doing them. Thus, good guidance, willpower, and regular practice, even if in the beginning the amount is small but regular, comprise the formula for improving the quality of one's life. Now that's exciting. But most encouraging is that by the incremental practice of devotional service, one can cheat death by becoming a great soul and going back to Godhead. Scripture gives abundant detail on how to practice devotional service. With the help of Scripture and the guidance of the bona fide spiritual master, one can achieve pure love for Sri Krishna. Lord Krishna instructs Brahma in Sri Brahma Samhita 559. The highest devotion is attained in slow degrees by the method of constant endeavor for self-realization with the help of scriptural evidence, theistic conduct, and perseverance in practice. What are the three? Scriptural evidence, theistic conduct, perseverance. You are the image of theistic conduct. Just seeing you is inspiring. This highest devotion, pure love of God, brings the practitioner unconditional happiness and good fortune. And according to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, it is the ultimate goal of life. The boy saint, Sri Prahlad, gives us 9 general categories of devotional practice that one can perform to attain these treasures. 1, hearing about Krishna. 2, chanting Krishna's transcendental holy names, forms, qualities, paraphernalia, and pastimes. 3, remembering Krishna. 4, serving the lotus feet of Krishna. 5, offering Krishna respectful worship with 16 types of paraphernalia. 6, offering prayers to Krishna. 7, becoming Krishna's servant. 8, considering Krishna one's best friend. And 9, surrendering everything unto the Lord. In other words, serving him with the body, mind, and words. Who is the most famous for hearing about Krishna and thus attaining perfection? Yes? Parikshit? Yes. Who's the most famous for speaking about Krishna? Who? Okay. Who is the most famous for remembering Krishna? Prahlad. Who's the most famous for serving the lotus feet of Krishna? Lakshmi. Who is the most famous for offering Krishna respectful worship with 16 types of paraphernalia? Prithu. Who's the most famous for offering prayers to Krishna? Akrura. 7. Who's the most famous for becoming Krishna's servant? Hanuman. Who's considered to attain perfection by becoming Krishna's best friend? Arjuna. And who is the most famous and and a devotee who shares who has his namesake resides here at ISKCON of Silicon Valley? It's for surrendering everything unto the Lord. Bali Maharaj. Okay, thank you. Yeah, it's good to remember these 9 practices that Shastra says one can perform one of them, some of them, or all of them. And some of you mentioned Maharaj Ambarish, and all the other ones, Gajendra is also famous. Some of them are given in Shastra in a very concise verse, which Prabhupada used to sing, that names each one who's famous. But there are other devotees who are famous for these things. But the fact is that if one takes any of these processes very seriously, one will advance in Krishna consciousness to the perfectional stage and become famous oneself. Continuing, Sri Prahlad goes on to accept these 9 processes as pure devotional service. And he concludes that one who has dedicated his life to the service of Krishna through these 9 methods is the most learned person, or one who has acquired complete knowledge. Back to basics. Sri Prahlad, one of the 12 most respected authorities in Vedic literature, has defined these 9 basic categories of practice as the framework on which to build our devotional lives. Additionally, the Bhakti scriptures and Bhakti masters explain the hierarchy of these practices in terms of degree of importance as one advances through the various stages of Krishna consciousness. For example, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati writes that the most important bhakti practice, especially in the beginning, is to hear about Krishna. Quote, in the neophyte stage, one should always engage in hearing Krishna Katha. This is called Shravana Dasha, the stage of hearing. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati goes on to say that one enters successively higher stages of devotional service through the doorway of one's initial attachment for hearing about Krishna. Furthermore, although the scriptures contain mountains of rules and regulations, do's and don'ts, the Padma Purana distills the myriad commands and proscriptions into a list of 2. What are they? Correct. Krishna is the origin of Lord Vishnu. He should always be remembered and never forgotten at any time. All the rules and regulations, rules and prohibitions mentioned in the scripture should be the servants of these 2 principles. ARC, always remember Krishna. Thus, the short list of devotional practices reads, 1, always remember Krishna, and 2, various followers of Lord Chaitanya have also presented condensed lists of devotional practices. For example, Lord Chaitanya gives his disciple, Srila Sanatana Goswami, a condensed list of only 5 items, saying that out of 64 distinct limbs, angas, of devotional practice, these 5 are the best. Number 1, association with devotees. Number 2, chanting the holy names of the Lord. 3, hearing Srimad Bhagavatam. 4, residing in a holy place like Mathura or in a temple. And 5, worshiping the deity. In response to a question asked by Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu further boils down his list of 5 most important items to a single practice. Quote, then the Bhattacharya asked Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, which item is most important in the execution of devotional service? The Lord replied that the most important item was the chanting of the holy name of the Lord. Similarly, Srinath Chakravarti Thakur, in his commentary on Srimad Bhagavatam, called Chaitanya Mata Manjusha, gives what he considers the essence of Mahaprabhu's devotional practices as follows. 1, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the son of Nanda Maharaj, is to be worshipped along with his transcendental abode Vrindavan. 2, the most pleasing form of worshipping the Lord is that which was performed by the gopis of Vrindavan. 3, Srimad Bhagavatam is the spotless authority on everything. And 4, pure devotion, pure love of God is the ultimate goal of life for all men. An analysis of the intricacies of these various lists of the essential practices and characteristics of devotional service and how to apply them as we advance is beyond the scope of this book. I list them here simply to highlight the importance of the basics and to inspire devotees in their practice and serious study of the science of pure devotion as Srila Prabhupada laid it out in his books. Everyone okay so far? Is it okay to just keep reading for a while? You're able to? All right. Devotees who learn and steadfastly apply these basics without fail will rise to the highest levels of perfection in devotional service. Or as Srila Prabhupada puts it, success is sure for the rigid practitioner. This principle applies to all areas of practice, even in the material sphere. Celebrated martial arts master Bruce Lee, for example, attests to the powerful results of repeatedly practicing the basics of his discipline in this famous saying, quote, I fear not the man who has practiced 10,000 kicks once, but I fear the man who has practiced 1 kick 10,000 times. Considering that in the present age, most people have short lives and must contend with many distractions, these scriptural digests are not only useful but vital. Even amid the unavoidable interruptions and disturbances in the whirlwind of a modern life's duties, one may thrive in spiritual life by suitably applying oneself to the basic devotional practices. Extolling the astounding spiritual potency of the 5 core practices of Krishna consciousness, Lord Chaitanya told Sanatana Goswami, quote, the power of these 5 principles is very wonderful and difficult to understand. Even without faith in them, a person who is offenseless can awaken his dormant love of Krishna simply by being a little connected with them. And regarding the acme of all the processes taught by Mahaprabhu, chanting the holy names of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Srimad Bhagavatam 11.536 declares, those who are actually advanced in knowledge are able to appreciate the essential value of this age of Kali. Such enlightened persons worship Kali Yuga because in this fallen age, all perfection of life can be easily achieved, be achieved by the performance of Sankirtan. The founder Acharya of ISKCON, Srila Prabhupada, prescribed the following basics for his followers. Chant at least 16 rounds of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra on beads every day, and avoid the 4 pillars of sinful life: meat eating, illicit sex, intoxication, and gambling. Beyond this, the daily ISKCON temple schedule he put in place comprises Mahaprabhu's 5 most essential practices of devotional service: chanting the holy name, worshiping the deity, living in a holy place, associating with devotees, and hearing Srimad Bhagavatam. Even those who don't live in or near a temple can easily integrate these 5 items of devotional service into their daily schedules at home. Srila Prabhupada has given us all the support, instructions, and paraphernalia we need to do so. In short, the devotional practices recommended by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu are so potent and easy to perform that wherever and in whatever condition we live, and in any stage of life, we can keep our bhakti sadhana strong. Of course, the topmost agent of Lord Chaitanya's teachings, Sri Rupa Goswami, does say that the essence of all advice is that we should organize our lives in such a way, we should organize our lives such that we remain engaged in devotional service 24 hours a day. In fact, many verses of the Bhakti scriptures say that one's practice should be performed continuously, satatam or nityam. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, however, encourages beginners by advising them that the non-stop practice of bhakti can be taken to mean regular or at least every day. He goes on to say that continuous practice in remembrance of Krishna is impractical for beginners, and that taking such scriptural directives literally can cause neophyte practitioners who cannot possibly follow such literal interpretations to lose faith in the rules of bhakti. He concludes that for them, satata means every day, not every moment. Now that we've heard about the power of following the basic practices of devotional service, I will list 5 important characteristics of strong sadhana and elaborate the ways we can cultivate them. Strong sadhana has 5 basic characteristics. It is performed with the proper attitude. It is regular. It is attentive. It is goal-oriented. And it is best carried out according to one's capacity. Can anybody remember the 5? Number 1 is attitude. Number 2? It must be done regularly. Consistency is key in any practice. Number 3? Attentive. Attentive. The word ten is, it means to connect to something. We keep our attention. Where we keep our attention is what we really become in life, what we are attentive to. Next one? Goal-oriented. And number 5? According to capacity. According to your capacity.
Can you elaborate on goal-oriented?
Okay, just now coming. First, I'll go through the list. It's all elaborated now. From now on in the chapter, it's unpacking this. Strong sadhana means proper attitude. Whatever one does and wherever one goes, one's attitude is important. It is said that your attitude determines your altitude in life. And some say even more forcefully, attitude is everything. Attitude is the way we think and feel about something, an outlook that determines the way we act. Srila Prabhupada writes about the importance of attitude in practicing devotional service. Quote, advancement in Krishna consciousness depends on the attitude of the follower, unquote. What is the ideal attitude for a practitioner eager to advance in devotional service? Srila Prabhupada uses 3 adjectives to define it. strict, serious, and sincere. What are the three? To be strict means to be rigorous with oneself in following one's chosen method of practice. Srila Raghunath Das Goswami, for example, was so strict in his daily routine that Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita compares his devotional practice to lines in stone. To be serious means that during one's practice, one is thoughtful and attentive to the details. It also means that one does not back down from doing the needful to attain one's goal, even in the face of temptation, distraction, or calamity. In Srimad Bhagavatam, Dhruva Maharaj is described as thoughtful and intelligent because when asked by the Lord of Wealth, Kuvera, to accept a reward for his austerities, Dhruva declined and in turn asked only for unflinching faith in and remembrance of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The word sincere comes from the Latin sincerus, meaning clean, pure, free from pretense or deceit, proceeding from genuine feelings. To be sincere in one's practice of devotional service means to accept and follow Krishna's directives without envy or ulterior motives. Srila Prabhupada describes the attitude of the sincere devotee in his purport to Bhagavad Gita 3:7. Instead of becoming a pseudo-transcendentalist for the sake of wanton living and sense enjoyment, it is far better to remain in one's own business and execute the purpose of life, which is to get free from material bondage and enter in the kingdom of God. A sincere person who follows this method is far better situated than the false pretender who adopts show bottle spiritualism to cheat the innocent public. A sincere sweeper in the street is far better than the charlatan meditator who meditates only for the sake of making a living. Does anybody here know what a show bottle is? Yeah? Have you seen one? Oh, you heard? Okay.
Donald Trump.
Okay, tell us.
To homeopathic medicine.
Oh, actually, in many, like in a pharmacy sometimes, I know they do this in India, they'll have a big bottle of medicine, and it won't be filled with the medicine itself because it's there for show. And they'll put some dye in the water or something, make it red, and then the bottle's there on the shelf. So actually, there's nothing really medicinal about it. It's just there to show that there's supposed to be some medicine somewhere. So it means somebody without content. They're actually just showing off that, you know, I'm a devotee, I'm practicing, but internally they don't have any real intention. So it's just for show, just for show. In Japan, at every restaurant, they have in the window an exact replica of the entire menu, and it's made out of plastic. You can't tell because the artistry is so good. It looks exactly like the real thing. But that's show bottle also. If you get that stuff, you won't be nourished. Srila Prabhupada does not use all three terms, strict, serious, and sincere, together in a thread as I am doing. Rather, he invokes them individually. However, taking advantage of the opportunity offered by the alliteration of these three key words, I can string them together like nicely matched gemstones on a thread, sutra. They do go beautifully well together. Stringing them together like this also employs the helpful technique of summary. The concise mantra or sutra-like union of these deeply meaningful terms makes the string convenient to keep on the tongue and bear in the mind. Strict, serious, sincere. This sutra provides a constant reminder and prompts us to realize its meaning in our lives. To be strict, serious, and sincere may seem daunting at first because these traits demand moral courage and elevated character. In fact, being strict, serious, and sincere in one's sadhana often brings one into conflict with the currently prevailing familial, social, or business values, and of course with one's own material desires and false ego. For instance, I sometimes hear from devotees who work in corporations that their fellow workers chide them for not coming to the bar or to see the latest film. To keep on the path of transcendence, one has to relinquish easy pleasures and forego facile popularity, facing the risk of being misunderstood, unappreciated, or even ostracized. A hero is one who confronts and overcomes all kinds of adversity to achieve an illustrious goal. Krishna consciousness is the highest goal of all, and the best kind of hero, then, is the person who remains steadfast on the path and controls his or her senses for the sake of satisfying Krishna. Srila Prabhupada writes about the heroism of those who carefully practice devotional service. Quote, every living entity is a hero in two ways. When he is a victim of the illusory energy, he works as a great hero in the material world. As a great leader, politician, businessman, industrialist, etc., and his heroic activities contribute to the material advancement of civilization. One can also become a hero by being the master of the senses, a Goswami. Material activities are false heroic activities, whereas restraining the senses from material engagement is great heroism. The following prayer by a heroic devotee is a sample of the mentality of such devotees. O my Lord, there is no limit to the unwanted orders of lusty desires. Although I have rendered these desires so much service, they have not shown any mercy to me. I have not been ashamed to serve them, nor have I even desired to give them up. O my Lord, O head of the Yadu dynasty, recently, however, my intelligence has been awakened, and now I am giving them up. Due to transcendental intelligence, I now refuse to obey the unwanted orders of these desires, and I now come to you to surrender myself at your fearless lotus feet. Kindly engage me in your personal service and save me. Such a heroic act, isn't it, to confront the urges of the senses and for a higher purpose to continue with one's sadhana, with attention. Every moment that we do this throughout our life gives us increments of spiritual strength. Every tiny victory that we make is heroic because, as Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, Daivahi shagunamayi mama maya duratyaya mamevaye prapadyante mayam etam turantite. This material nature is very dangerous, it's very treacherous, and it's impossible to overcome. And those who take shelter of the words of the scripture and the previous acharyas and their spiritual masters to overcome this daunting force of material nature and overcome the lower self by the higher self, they become the greatest heroes in this world. And one knows it for oneself. Immediately upon achieving a tiny victory, don't you realize that you've gotten something so valuable? On the other hand, there's always cheating that can go on. One can be a show bottle and present oneself to be a great devotee, while on the other side, perhaps not following very carefully. Internally, there's no sense of integrity or inspiration. But if one genuinely follows the practice of devotional service and makes incremental improvement and advancement, one feels this sense that one is advancing in devotional service, sees for oneself that one is getting spiritually strong. Spiritual heroes are those who have decided to follow the instructions of the bona fide spiritual masters and the instructions of Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita, even if as yet unable to fully execute them. In this regard, Srila Prabhupada writes, "But an ordinary man with firm faith in the eternal injunctions of the Lord, even though unable to execute such orders, becomes liberated from the bondage of the law of karma. In the beginning of Krishna consciousness, one may not fully discharge the injunctions of the Lord, but because one is not resentful of this principle and works sincerely without consideration of defeat and hopelessness, he will surely be promoted to the stage of pure Krishna consciousness. Before I go on, we'll just take a few reflections. Anything that you've heard so far that's stuck in your mind that might be considered helpful, that you consider helpful. Kanka?
I really like what you just said about continuing on without fear or intrepidation. Just continue on. Because I know in the past, so many devotees, well, I can't follow perfectly, so I'm not going to follow at all. And what's the sense of that? It's like we need to follow and move forward, try to do the best we can each day.
Thank you. That was helpful.
I liked what you said about how every little victories are incremental, heroic acts that gradually change you. And I think, now that I'm getting older, I always have memories of something I did, 20 years ago or 30 years ago or whatever, these little memories. And I think that all the things that I've done, sort of make up what I am now, kind of. And that the fact that I've done some things in devotional service, even though I haven't been perfect, have changed me for the better, have made me more of a devotee.
Thank you. Nice observation. Harivamsha.
Thank you, Prabhu. I really like so much of stress on a strong sadhana and because I was hearing that whatever the plant you see outside, that's because the roots are stronger. Otherwise, that plant won't be there. And earlier, I used to think in the beginning that sadhana bhakti is great, but until you reach to the bhava platform, then only it's the real thing. But recently I was revisiting Nectar of Devotion, and Rupa Goswami strongly says, and Prabhupada in Nectar of Devotion says that Vaidhi sadhana bhakti, following the rules and regulation, that's enough, because that's a precursor and it's the necessary and sufficient condition to go to bhava. So it was so nourishing that just we can follow the rules and regulations, we'll get everything. So
Yes, the scriptures and the great acharyas give us full permission to completely follow the process, which is nice to have that, because the materialistic mind may make other suggestions and say, well, why don't you just do it halfway? But throughout the scripture, we're given this advice, no, follow it all the way and be strict, serious, and sincere about it. I'm going to keep going because I have to get to the part that Kanka asked about, otherwise I'll be remiss. Continuing, more on attitude, one should feel helpless. With an attitude of helplessness, a devotee cries out with feeling to Krishna, "O Krishna, I am weak and powerless, please help me." Srila Prabhupada tells us how only those who develop this disposition are able to call out to the Lord with ardent feelings. Quote, "A helpless man can feelingly utter the holy name of the Lord, whereas a man who utters the same holy name in great material satisfaction cannot be so sincere. A materially puffed up person may utter the holy name of the Lord occasionally, but he is incapable of uttering the name in quality." Unquote. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur displays this attitude in Sharanagati, Song 3, verse 6. "I'm utterly helpless. Without your mercy, everything is lost. Please give me the shelter of your lotus feet." As the Jaladuta approached the American coast, Srila Prabhupada wrote in his diary, "Although my Guru Maharaj ordered me to accomplish this mission, I am not worthy or fit to do it. I am very fallen and insignificant. Therefore, O Lord, now I am begging for your mercy so that I may become worthy, for you are the wisest and most experienced of all." In such a humble and helpless state of mind, one can sincerely pray to Krishna and his devotees for help. With this attitude, which is pleasing to Krishna, a tiny, powerless living entity becomes a real hero. The unlimitedly powerful Lord Krishna exalts such a sincere soul, empowering him to perform more and more devotional service. Heroic devotees, therefore, declare themselves helpless, but taking full shelter of Krishna and the practice of devotional service, accomplish amazing feats. The strong sadhana is vigilant. Another important trait that leads to powerful sadhana is vigilance. To be vigilant means to keep careful watch for possible danger. As the adage, often attributed to Thomas Jefferson, proclaims, eternal vigilance is the price of liberty. This statement tallies with those Krishna makes in the Bhagavad Gita, where he repeatedly says that real freedom is freedom from the oppressing dictates of the senses, and that with that freedom, we should choose to serve him rather than Maya. Such unimpeded freedom to practice devotional service depends on our vigilance. We must control the mind and senses. In Bhagavad Gita 2:64, Krishna explains how the freedom to attain the Lord's mercy derives from following regulative principles. Quote, but a person free from all attachment and aversion and able to control his senses through regulative principles of freedom can obtain the complete mercy of the Lord. Unquote. Practically speaking, to merit such freedom, and especially to preserve it, one must be careful. In summary, maintaining a healthy fear of Maya is actually a regulative principle for those engaged in strong sadhana. In his purport to the Bhagavatam 765, Srila Prabhupada comments on this caution. Quote, a sane man, therefore, is always fearful of falling from his position. This is a regulative principle. One should not fall down from his exalted position. The highest goal of life can be achieved as long as one's body is stout and strong. We should therefore live in such a way that we keep ourselves always healthy and strong in mind and intelligence, so that we can distinguish the goal of life from a life full of problems. A thoughtful man must act in this way, learning to distinguish right from wrong, and thus attain the goal in life. It's so interesting also in regard to that statement that a small mistake, a moment of indiscretion. In fact, there are plays and movies and songs written about this, moments of indiscretion leading to a lifetime of bondage and suffering. People give into the senses, and then next thing you know, they have to work hard to pay for that mistake for the rest of their life, and so on. So this vigilance is an attitude that's taken up by those who are wise. They don't take for granted that everything will go well in this world. They rather discern that there's danger at every step, and therefore they should be very careful. I wrote a small piece when I was in Japan recently, because I went for a walk the first morning we had arrived in Kamakura, which is an ancient city in Japan. And near our host's home, there's a trail that goes up a hill. And when we got partway up the trail, it had rained the night before, and we found it was a little slippery and hard to go up. But did you know that going up a trail is a lot easier than coming back down when it's slippery? And coming back down the trail took a lot of concentration. I mean, when you're 15 or something and you slip and fall, it's not a really big deal. But the three of us who were going up the hill were a little older than 15. And we considered it several times, how it could change our lives, slipping on that slope and, possibly even going over the edge. And so I noticed as I was coming down how I took care where I put every step. I noted how the ground was formed and whether it had debris on it that would actually hold me. And I held on to roots and branches and whatever I could over the 50 yards that it took us to come down that slope. We painstakingly chose our steps. And at the bottom, I was thinking how this is a good guide to the human form of life, that one shouldn't consider that there's no danger. One should rather think that there's danger at every step and not haphazardly just charge ahead. And one should see where one is putting one's foot before one puts one's full weight on it. Consider these things carefully. Otherwise, there are consequences, and that's part of the lesson of living in this world. We see this same cautious attitude reflected in the thoughts of even the most advanced devotees. Prahlad Maharaj, for example, says to Lord Nrsingadev in Srimad Bhagavatam 7.9.16, O most powerful, insurmountable Lord, who are kind to the fallen souls, I have been put into the association of demons as a result of my activities, and therefore I am very much afraid of my condition of life within this material world. When will that moment come when you will call me to the shelter of your lotus feet, which are the ultimate goal for liberation from conditional life? It is important for those advancing in spiritual life to recognize how this healthy fear of Maya is an intrinsic component of humility. In Brihad Bhagavatamrita, Narada Muni explains to Gopakumar that utter humility is the essential prerequisite for attaining pure love for Krishna. In that same section, Sanatana Goswami comments that a healthy fear of Maya is one of the qualities of such humility. Quote, someone might say that the quality of thinking oneself very fallen may also be seen in persons who are simply lazy or those who abandon auspicious work or indulge in sinful acts. Therefore, Narada specifies that one who actually has dainya, utter humility, is endowed with all good qualities. For instance, such a person observes positive and negative regulations, he is free of false ego, and he has a healthy fear of material life. Unquote. In contrast, those who join the Krishna consciousness movement, but whose practice in devotional service over time becomes casual, may unwittingly drift away from the path, only to be captured again by Krishna's illusory energy. Srila Prabhupada confirms this truth. The nature's illusory methods are of two kinds. One is covering energy, and another is throwing energy. Nature is acting upon us in two ways. Just like someone may think, here is a nice movement, Krishna consciousness movement. Let me take part in this. And nature dictates, why shall you go there? Don't go there. Better enjoy like this. This throwing energy throws him from the path. And another is covering energy. Covering energy means a person or a living entity may remain in the most abominable condition. Still, he thinks he is happy. Benjamin Franklin, who organized Philadelphia's first firefighting company, coined the useful precept, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. That was Rabindra Sarupa, who read the book, brought this to my attention, because I had the quote, and then he pointed out that he had started the first firefighting company, organized the first firefighting company. And I just thought it was a really nice, subtle touch because, of course, the whole... Yes, we have more history coming in from our historian. Yeah. Give him the mic. This is important. There's 80 people online listening.
Benjamin Franklin also established the first fire insurance company as well. And actually, he was an originator of the whole industry of insurance.
Just see. Point is, stuff happens here in the material world, and you better be careful. Again, Srila Prabhupada sums up this regulative principle. A sane man, therefore, is always fearful of falling from his position. This is a regulative principle. One should not fall from his exalted position. In this way, caution is the creed of the strict, serious, and sincere practitioner of devotional service. Such an advanced devotee remains modest, thinking, I am not liberated, nor am I entitled to honor. This humility or freedom from false pride within the sadhaka also fosters vigilance, an awareness that Maya can attack at any time and from any direction. Maya is so expert, in fact, that she makes a proposition just suited to each victim, working in subtle ways to exploit that person's weakest point. For most, the weakest point and the door through which Maya finds her way in is false pride. The moment one thinks, I'm more advanced than others, or because I'm liberated, I may slacken my practice of bhakti, one opens the door for Maya to enter one's life. Why is pride so pernicious in spiritual life? Pride breeds the enjoying spirit, which in turn brings laxity. And laxity convinces one to give up the fortifying daily practice of devotional service, or worse, to offend other living entities, or worse still, to offend devotees of the Lord. To justify one's laxity, one develops a sense of entitlement. With this attitude of entitlement, one thinks, I've done so much in the past. I deserve special treatment. I can cut corners in my practice. I can treat others harshly or with disdain. Living with these insidious cousins of entitlement attracts Maya to stay permanently in one's mind and heart, and one's devotional life is stifled. Spiritual advancement is not cheap. Freedom, therefore, is for the vigilant, a point Krishna confirms in the Bhagavad Gita 5:7. Quote, one who works in devotion, who is a pure soul, and who controls his mind and senses is dear to everyone, and everyone is dear to him. Though always working, such a man is never entangled. Strong sadhana is regularly performed. Keep going? Yes. I mean, what else are you going to tell me? Stop. It's a little self-serving, I guess. Regular practice over time fosters purity, and reliable practice over time evokes faith, both of which are pleasing to Krishna. Srila Prabhupada writes, Krishna is pleased to award benediction upon the aspiring devotee engaged in his service with patience, determination, and regularity. What are the three things? Some great gems there, huh? Regular and reliable practice is also a cornerstone of strong sadhana. The Sanskrit word vrat, vow, is related to the reliability of serious devotees. At the time of initiation, therefore, a devotee makes promises to or takes vows before the spiritual master and Krishna. Persons who always fulfill their promises, who always do what they say they will do, are deemed reliable. One who remains reliable over time invokes faith and confidence in others. Krishna explains the principle of making a determined vow, dridhavrata, in the Bhagavad Gita 7:28. Persons who have acted piously in previous lives and in this life, and whose sinful actions are completely eradicated, are freed from the dualities of delusion, and they engage themselves in my service with determination. We frequently hear the words nityam and satatam used in Scripture to describe the nature of devotional service. These words are usually translated as eternal and always, respectively. In the context of practice, however, these words generally mean consistent, constant, or regular. Devotional practice that is nityam or satatam is either continuous non-stop practice or practice done daily at regular intervals. For example, a daily morning session of chanting the Hare Krishna mantra on beads at the same time for the same duration acts as a powerful tonic that builds spiritual strength. The world-famous concert violinist Joshua Hevitz says about the importance of regular practice. If I don't practice for 1 day, I know it. If I don't practice for 2 days, my critics know it. If I don't practice for 3 days, everyone knows it. One of the secrets of strong sadhana, therefore, is to somehow or other show up every day for your practice without fail. The power of showing up. Economists refer to money as dollar votes because people spend their money on whatever they value most. Every dollar spent, they say, is a vote for what a consumer values most. Similarly, showing up for one's daily sadhana is a devotee's deliberate vote for Krishna over illusion. Those who vote by showing up, therefore, need not say much. And since in any relationship, consistency and reliability nurture faith, our consistency in showing up for our daily practice builds Krishna's faith in us and ours in him. Strong sadhana is attentive. As one's faith in Krishna grows, so too do one's intention to serve him by practicing devotional service. The words intention and attention both derive from the same Latin word, intentio, which means to stretch forward. What Latin word does it come from? Intentio. Persons with a strong intention to practice devotional service will naturally fix their attention on it. In other words, one's clear intention leads to one's fixed attention, which is another mark of strong sadhana. Bhakti scriptures say not only that our attention is our most valuable asset, but also that a progressive human being must study well the science of how to invest his or her attention in order to receive the highest return. The great masters of devotional service therefore consider inattentiveness the 11th fence against the holy name, because from inattentive chanting the other 10 offenses spring. As conscious living entities, we can choose where to place our attention at every moment. And those who choose to fix their attention on one or more of the 9 practices of devotional of Krishna consciousness daily and over time are demonstrating their chastity to Krishna. Srila Prabhupada explains chastity in a purport to Srimad Bhagavatam 3.636. One should not become unchaste by stopping the activities of pure consciousness. If the activities of pure consciousness are stopped, certainly the conscious living force will be otherwise engaged, because unless engaged, the consciousness has no standing. Consciousness cannot be silent even for a moment. Where we choose to place our attention, then, determines the quality and direction of our lives. The choice to give one's attention to a particular topic, object, or task is an investment. In other words, when a person pays attention, he or she is acquiring an asset. The Bhakti scriptures suggest, therefore, that to attain the perfection of life, we acquire the assets of purposefully and repeatedly turning our attention to the sound of Krishna's holy name, form, and pastimes. Srimad Bhagavatam says that because human life is exceedingly rare and precariously temporary, we should give one-pointed attention to this pursuit. Quote, therefore, with one-pointed attention, one should constantly hear about, glorify, remember, and worship the personality of Godhead, who is the protector of the devotees. Bhakti yogis, having received this insider information from Guru and Shastra about how and where to get the best return on their most important investment, pay exclusive attention to topics about Krishna. They also meditate on Krishna's forms and at the same time do their work to please him. As Krishna himself advises Arjuna in Bhagavad Gita 8.7, therefore, Arjuna, you should always think of me in the form of Krishna, at the same time carry out your prescribed duty of fighting. With your activities dedicated to me and your mind and intelligence fixed on me, you will attain me without doubt. When we absorb the mind in worldly affairs, we spend our time absorbed in worrying about and scheming over future events. When things don't go our way or haven't in the past, we spend our time lamenting. With all this and more going on, we may find it difficult to pay strict attention to our practices, especially in the initial stages of devotional service. But Krishna reminds Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita 6.35 that it is possible to train the mind to become attentive and amenable to devotional service, quote, by suitable practice and by detachment. Krishna also gives Arjuna practical guidance how to go about training the mind. Quote, from wherever the mind wanders due to its flickering and unsteady nature, one must certainly withdraw it and bring it back under the control of the self. We're getting close, Kanka. It's only a couple more paragraphs. Should I skip ahead? Because time is... I don't think I'll be able to... Well, Krishna also gives... Okay. One friend, the father of two energetic boys, once told me that he had to wake up each day earlier than his boys and make a clear plan to engage them throughout the morning. Otherwise, he said, they run wild, making it practically impossible to settle them down for the rest of the morning. The mind is just like an unruly child. It needs a strong authority figure, a resolute intelligence, and a plan to keep it engaged in positive, productive ways. To control the mind, then, one must similarly have a plan to engage it in devotional service. For instance, one may make a plan and suitable arrangements the night before to hear and chant with attention during the morning hours. Before going to bed, one can neatly arrange one's sitting place, japa beads, and the books one intends to read the following morning. With one's devotional articles set up the night before, one's attention naturally goes to them as soon as one wakes up, increasing the impetus to perform one's service, one's practice. Strict practitioners also turn off all electronic devices and inform friends, family members, and associates that they are not to be disturbed during their attentive bhakti practices. One who wakes up in the morning with such a solid plan sets the stage for the attentive practice of devotional service. The time one sets aside for devotional practice belongs to Krishna and the spiritual master. With this in mind, one cultivates feelings of intimacy in relationship with one's guru and Krishna, further inspiring one to be regular and reliable in devotional service. Srila Prabhupada once remarked that some sadhus who live by the Ganges go elsewhere to take their bath due to becoming overly familiar with Mother Ganga, and thus taking her for granted. Over time, it's easy to take our devotional service so much for granted that we become inattentive while doing it. And even though devotional practices are full of bliss, when our mind goes elsewhere during our practice, we do not taste the bliss. Here, Srila Prabhupada tells of the importance of attentive hearing. Quote, when you hear about Krishna, that is also Krishna. Actually, when you are reading Krishna book, Krishna is fighting with the demons. That is also his pastime. So Krishna is present. So you should be very attentive and worship this hearing. Unless we come to this point, there's lack of realization what is Krishna. Worship this hearing. Isn't that nice? Yeah. That's really nice. And here is another example of Srila Prabhupada's many comments on regular attentive chanting. Quote, as you chant, try to hear each word very carefully and always complete your 16 rounds. Regular and attentive chanting, along with following the 4 regulative principles, will keep one pure. Simply by following these principles and chanting Hare Krishna, one can make his life successful and perfect. What does your life become? Successful and perfect. That's hard to beat. You can't get it anywhere else, nowhere else available. Such regular and attentive practice arises especially when one keeps a clear goal in mind. Here you go, Kanka. Sadhana should be goal-oriented. In the Bhagavad Gita 266, Srila Prabhupada writes, disturbance is due to want of an ultimate goal. Humans are meant for accumulating transcendental assets, Daivi Sampat. This they can accomplish by hearing about Krishna and rendering service to Krishna's devotees, as mentioned in 2 of Srimad Bhagavatam's most celebrated verses. Quote, O twice-born sages, by serving those devotees who are completely free from all vice, once great service is done. By such service one gains affinity for hearing the messages of Vasudeva. Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead, who is the Paramatma, supersoul in everyone's heart, and benefactor of the truthful devotee, cleanses desire for material enjoyment from the heart of the devotee, who has developed the urge to hear his messages, which are in themselves virtuous when properly heard and chanted. Now, there's a lot of urges one can have in life, but if you develop the urge to hear about Krishna, then you're actually on an advanced stage of devotional service. This is mentioned by Lord Kapila Dev, the third canto of the Bhagavatam, when he defines devotional service in various modes of nature. And the distinguishing feature that one has come to devotional service even beyond the mode of goodness, that is, it's purely transcendental, as one develops an urge to hear about Krishna. And after hearing about Krishna, one wants to hear more. The mind doesn't turn off and go in other directions, but it runs after the sound. By performing attentive devotional service, we deposit spiritual credits that accumulate in a transcendental bank account within our hearts. When the balance becomes great enough, we can purchase the most valuable of fixed assets, transcendental loving service to Krishna in the company of his eternal associates in the kingdom of God. The Brihanaradiya Purana 433 confirms that this process works. Quote, "The awakening of bhakti takes place when one associates with the Lord's pure devotees. Such association with pure devotees is attained only by the accumulation of transcendental pious activities performed over many lifetimes. One who accumulates sufficient spiritual wealth, therefore, becomes qualified for higher levels of devotional service. In fact, the Bhakti scriptures say that just as a capitalist hoards gold, a devotee, enlivened by the prospect of advancing in spiritual life, stockpiles sacred knowledge and mantras in the association of like-minded devotees. This truth is confirmed by a verse in Srila Rupa Goswami's Padyavali. Quote, "O Lord, just as a miser continually collects, counts, and remembers his money, in the same way, let us continually collect, count, and remember your holy names." In the material sense, greed is considered to be a low-grade quality. But when one's greed is applied to advancing in devotional service, it becomes a high-grade desire because it is perfectly utilized in devotional service. Indeed, Rupa Goswami says that one must have greed for pure devotional service in order to obtain it. Quote, "Pure devotional service in Krishna consciousness cannot be had by pious activity in hundreds of thousands of lives. It can be attained only by paying one price, that is intense greed, to obtain it. If it is available somewhere, one must purchase it without delay." Unquote. With these scriptural perspectives in mind, we can easily understand why the great teachers of bhakti say that goal-oriented practice of devotional service is vital. Srila Prabhupada stresses numerical strength, or carefully counting and maintaining one's daily vow to chant a set number of Krishna's names. Similarly, Srila Prabhupada encourages his followers to set daily reading goals. For example, he writes the following about reading a chapter of the Bhagavad Gita every day. "I thank you so much for having nicely appreciated the Bhagavad Gita as it is. This book should be read by all my students at least one chapter per day. And in Kirtan class, it should be discussed shloka after shloka. Practically, we have tried to explain in this book all of the basic principles of Krishna consciousness. If you can simply cram Bhagavad Gita, then you will surely become a very good preacher." Anyone here who's ever crammed for something, please raise your hand. Now you can cram Bhagavad Gita. When I learned about Srila Prabhupada's guideline to read a chapter of Bhagavad Gita a day, I started doing it myself. Later, I formed the Chapter a Day Club, CHAD, so that I could share this treasure with other devotees interested in following Srila Prabhupada's teachings. CHAD is now a worldwide circle of devotees who have vowed to chant at least one chapter from Bhagavad Gita as it is every day. To be a card-carrying member, one must chant all the verses of at least one entire chapter of the Gita, either the Sanskrit shlokas, the English translations, or both. We advertise the following list of benefits for joining CHAD. For those who choose to chant only the Sanskrit shlokas, the BBT, that's a footnote that the editors put in. 1, knowing that others are doing it with you, you'll feel greater impetus to chant the Gita every day. 2, by reciting and hearing the divine conversation between Krishna and Arjuna, you'll gain superior strength and knowledge in devotional service. 3, You'll be cleared of offenses you've committed while worshiping the deity. Did you know that? As part of the Archana Paddhati, there's mention that when you do deity worship, it's possible to commit aparadas. They're called seva aparadas. There's various kinds of aparads to be avoided. Nam aparad, Vaishnava aparad, there's seva aparad. So in worshiping Krishna, we may make some aparad. And the way to clear that is by chanting one chapter of Bhagavad Gita a day. Or chanting the entire Vishnu Sahasranam Stotram. Go with chapter 15 or 20. You'll be 15 or 12, excuse me. Because repetition is the mother of learning, you'll automatically learn multiple Bhagavad Gita verses through reciting a chapter a day. 5, you'll gain skill in citing important shlokas from Bhagavad Gita as evidence when you teach Krishna consciousness. And 6, because Krishna reveals himself to those who daily chant the Bhagavad Gita, you'll awaken a sweet relationship with him. To count and keep track of one's daily practice of devotional service follows the mood and method of the great predecessor teachers of devotional service. The 6 Goswamis of Vrindavan are especially known for their daily scheduled practices. In fact, Srinivasa Acharya, a contemporary of the 6 Goswamis, who witnessed their exemplary devotional practices, writes that they chanted the holy names of the Lord and bowed down in a quote-unquote scheduled measurement. Haridas Thakur, an eternal associate of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, is also celebrated for maintaining a strict vow. His was to chant 300,000 names of Krishna daily. The Hare Krishna Maha Mantra consists of 16 names, and one round consists of 108 mantras. To chant 300,000 names, therefore, the Thakur would daily complete 192 rounds. He would not do anything else in his day until he had honored his vow. Of course, one cannot imitate devotees like Haridas Thakur, who are liberated, perfected beings, and Srila Prabhupada was critical of devotees who tried to do so in order to avoid the practical services required to spread the Krishna consciousness movement. Still, strong sadhana means to set numerical goals for one's various devotional practices according to one's capacity, and to monitor one's progress toward reaching those goals. For instance, all initiated devotees in ISKCON carefully chant at least 16 rounds of japa on beads every day without fail. And some devotees log the number of pages of scripture they read each day. Others track their daily waking times and the days they attend the morning program in the temple and so on. Organizing one's life around spiritual goals is very productive. For example, those who read a set number of pages of Srimad Bhagavatam every day soon find that such regular reading gives them a notable spiritual boost. In the course of modern daily life, the complexities generated by unlimited options and argumentative attitudes often press us to make difficult decisions. A devotee who daily reads Srila Prabhupada's purports, however, develops a clear intelligence and fortifies himself against bad choices. In my own devotional life, I had long admired devotees who were able to regularly read through the entire Srimad Bhagavatam every year. I noticed that these devotees were making advancement and were also becoming expert at presenting the Krishna conscious philosophy. Looking at all the volumes of Srimad Bhagavatam together, however, my mind would sometimes tell me, you could never finish all these books in a year with all that you have going on in your life. One day, however, I read in a book by Brian Tracy the following simple suggestion. It changed my life. Quote, psychologically, you will find it easier to do a single small piece of a large project than to start on the whole job. Often, once you have started and completed a single part of the job, you will feel like doing just one more slice. Soon, you will find yourself working through the whole job, one part at a time. And before you know it, the job will be completed. After reading this, I thought of a way that I might read the whole Srimad Bhagavatam in a year by dividing it into small slices. My friend Srivas Pandit helped me by going through the Bhagavatam and calculating the total number of pages, 15,119. By dividing that number by 365, I computed the number of pages I would have to read daily to finish the Srimad Bhagavatam in 1 year, 41. Then all I had to do was decide to take a part of my day and read those 41 pages. With the overall goal now divided into small daily slices, my mind suddenly changed its tune. Instead of being intimidated, it asked, when can I start? On a roll, Srivas and I next calculated the number of pages in all of Srila Prabhupada's books and ascribed to each the number of pages one would have to read per day to complete each book within various periods of time. For example, the Bhagavad Gita has 868 pages, so one can read it in a month by reading just 29 pages a day, and so on. With all this information, we made a handy chart, and one day, while brainstorming with my friend Keshava Bharatidas Goswami, we jointly came up with what we felt was the perfect name for this chart: Be a Sage, page by page. Truly, by setting challenging goals and by segmenting into reasonable slices the activity needed to achieve those goals, one can easily reach them. Such goal-oriented practice sets one's life on a new positive course. In fact, not only is planning and implementing devotional service fun and natural, but it results in strong sadhana. And by keeping such strong sadhana, one can become a true sage within one's lifetime. For those of you who just came in, Hare Krishna, great to see you. Didn't I just see you somewhere? In Palo Alto? Thanks for coming. Just recently wrote a book. And so today is it arrived a couple days ago, so that's why all these books are put out. It's a book launch. So for the last hour or so, I've been asking these devotees to tolerate my reading of this chapter. And basically, the chapter has been about the importance of practice. It's just we practice in many skills in our lives, but devotional practice applied daily and consistently over time has a profoundly transformative effect that one can experience for oneself. And the Srimad Bhagavatam gives an example of a person who's very hungry and then who eats a good meal. And it says that that person will experience for him or herself that he or she is becoming nourished, satisfied, and that the hunger is dissipating with every bite. So in a similar way, those who take to the authorized process of devotional service, say authorized may sound condescending, but the point is that there is a path chalked out already by previous masters of devotional service. And just as in entering a physics class, one might be expected to adhere to the axioms given by previous great scientists. Similarly, those who enter the realm of devotional service are also expected to follow in the footsteps of the great teachers of devotional service, or called the masters or acharyas. And by doing so according to one's capacity and doing so consistently, one will see for oneself the transformation within one's mind and heart. Those are some of the points that we've been discussing. What happened to Priya Kishori? She's here? Okay. And now we'll take a few reflections. Anything that you heard so far that's stuck in your mind? Yeah.
Thank you, Maharaj, for reading. Lots of points, but one point stands out was dollar vote. How really...
Dollar votes.
Yeah. It's like, because recently I had a discussion with one of my colleagues, and then he was lamenting about what you wrote in your book, that I lost my money and everything. I told, but you're not able to see your bigger picture in your life. Money is lost, but your time, your attention, where you're paying, that is much more than what the money you're losing, and that's what is teaching, where you put your consciousness, that is that normal people doesn't able to see that where they're losing.
Yeah, so to reiterate, I had taken an economics class when I was at San Francisco State University, and in that class, I remember some of the opening words in the textbook in which money was described as dollar votes. I also remember the teacher describing that the lottery was a tax on the stupid. Few things I remember from my college days. But dollar votes is a very interesting concept, and it fit in with the overall idea of scarcity of resources in the material world and so forth. And one invests one's energy, and dollars, money is energy in particular resources. So the way we give our attention is an indication of our value system. So showing up for our daily devotional practice is an indication of our intense desire to advance in devotional service. Yes, Bali.
Very nice reading. And I was also looking to the point, the uncertainty that brings disturbances in the mind, because the uncertainty in the goal, and then also losing something, lamentation, which I was going through some of the recent Prabhupada's purport he mentioned about the past, present and future. Linked with past is likely shoka, lamentation, and present is delusion, and future is bhaya, which is fear, which is pretty well, I think you defined the uncertainty was really stuck in my mind.
There's a very practical point about goals. Even in ordinary endeavors, without a goal, one is not considered to be very serious. And also, as Bali Mardan Prabhu was bringing up, for lack of a goal, the mind becomes disturbed and even morose. But even if one's far away from the goal, if one has a clear goal and is resolute about it, there's a kind of energizing effect. And certainly it sounds counterintuitive that spiritual life would be goal-oriented, because that sounds much like the mode of rajas or passion, trying to get ahead. But as Narada Muni points out in the Bhagavatam, any principle which is applied to spiritual life has the effect that he says, if you have a thorn, you may need a thorn to take out the thorn. And applying what are apparently practical or even passionate principles to spiritual life is not only highly recommended, but required, as we heard. Yes?
Thank you, Prabhu, for reading. I really like the measurement part, because even if we see everywhere in businesses that will give me the numbers, I was recently thinking that be a sage page by page is actually even more profound than fixing the time, because when the direct object is the book and the something measurable is the pages, it's like direct object is a bead and the measurement there is the rounds, not the hours. So that's why Srila Prabhupada also mentioned 16 rounds, not chant for 2 hours or chant for 3 hours. So I was thinking that's so profound. In my personal experience, pages have worked much better than hours. If I fix 1 hour, then the mind, there is no goal to hook on. So thank you for reiterating that point.
Although I have met people, when I was in New York recently, I gave a talk, and somebody in the audience mentioned that she prefers to set an amount of time. And so none of these principles are set in stone, sort of cliche, but point is that they should be set in stone. Actually, I made that point earlier. But the point is that one should find some way to regulate the mind. One way or the other, the Shastra says, find a way to regularly show up for your practice. And if you do that, then you'll be able to conquer the lower self by the higher self, by that kind of regulation. Ragadvesho vimuktaistu vishayan indrayaischaran atmavashera vidhyatma prasadamadi gacchati. Krishna describes what he calls regulative principles of freedom. Interesting concept, something like strengthening the bonds that free us. And so now, let's chant for a little bit. Oh, you didn't get a point? I'm sorry.
Hare Krishna.
Please
I'll
go
make
ahead.
it quick. So this question is about the book, and I think there's a small story that I have to tell very quickly. I think sometime last year, right, Shraddha Mataji, I think, released a trailer of this book on a Facebook, and I just read those 3 words, our family business, and I was not able to see the Prabhupada's face, the text that went below that, and your name. And it caught me on a wrong foot, and I was thinking, family business, right? Is it like investment? Is it real estate? so
It's all of the above. And much, much more.
So the question is like the title, did that come easily to you, or like you had to spend
No,
some
I had a
time?
working title for a long time called The Art of Book Distribution.
Nice.
There are other books with similar titles. And, I mean, Indra Prabhu wrote a book that had something in that, and I think Narayan Maharaj put something. And so there were a lot of titles that were similar to that. And in the process of brainstorming with my editors over a long period of time, I can't remember the exact moment we came up with it.
Okay.
But
Thank you.
it came from that. And there was some perception that it came from Prabhupada, but we couldn't find the exact quote. But we found enough that were close to it. And there is a chapter called Our Family Business, in which I justify my use of the title.
Okay. Thank you.
So this, is there anything else I'm supposed to say or should say, Shraddha? Or that you would say? Better give her a microphone.
Hare Krishna. So now you just had a short 1-hour trailer of the book. I don't know how many pages that was.
2 hours.
2 hours. So I just wanted to let you know that the book is available for sale outside. And we have very limited copies, so don't wait for another day because people from other cities are also waiting in the queue. And so you can go, after the Artik, you can go outside and get the book. And Vaisesika Prabhu is going to sign the book. He'll be sitting in this corner of the room. And we'll be using this room also for honoring the prasadam. So we'll need a little bit of logistical control here. So once you get the book, if you can just enter from this door over here next to Prabhupada, and we'll just have 3 in line waiting inside to get the book signed. You can get your book signed and then, leave. Again, you can keep the book with you, whatever time that you want to get it signed today. He's going to be here tonight to sign the book for you. And please enjoy the reading. If you have any questions, there are 5 or 6 devotees outside volunteering for that, so feel free to ask any questions of that. That's all, Maharaj. And thank you so much for writing the book.
Thank you. Hare Krishna. Well, as I said yesterday, I wouldn't have been able to write it without you. It's a team effort, actually. It's all of us together. If we hadn't had this teamwork over the last, how long have we been working together? 11 years. At least with the team concept we came up with really starting in 2007 and developing a lot of the programs that we have that we've exported to many parts of the world. That's the genesis of what's in the book and all the seminars that I've been giving and so forth. So, back at you. Hare Krishna. Or as they say in Japanese, kochira koso. Same to you. Thank you very much. Nachari Armarman, Nachari Armarman, Nachari Armarman, Nachari Armarman, hey, Nachari Armarman, Natere Armarman, Natere Armarman, Natere Armarman.